I hope everybody is staying safe in this really unusual situation that we have. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about long-term care with a special section on how to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and what legal documents might be necessary. So I think everybody is online now. We have a couple of new participants. Let me go ahead and allow them to come in. Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. First, a couple little housekeeping items. If you wouldn't mind putting your cell phones on vibrate so you don't get any echo. I have everybody on mute. There will be a way to get all your questions answered, and I'll explain that at the end of the workshop. Our program will last about a half an hour, and thank you for attending tonight. So why are you here? Well, you might be spending assets for long-term care. Many of the people that listen to our program, which we've basically been doing live for the last 10 years. This is our first webinar, and many of our clients are still concerned about paying for long-term care because they have a family member already in a nursing home. You might be planning ahead for long-term care. Many of the people that consult with us basically have set up their retirement plan with adequate income stream, but perhaps have not considered long-term care and how that could impact those plans. And of course, many of you saw our advertisement for basically the COVID-19 legal packet and what legal documents are going to be necessary in this really unusual time. So hopefully that outlines our program for you, and that's why you're here, because you're going to learn how to protect your assets, your income, and your family, avoiding critical mistakes, and that's the biggest part of what we're going to focus on, and discovering strategies that you may not hear anywhere else. And then we'll focus on a couple of federal and state programs that allow you to pay for long-term care. So how can your money be reduced? Well, first and foremost, in the stock market. Now, a year ago, this was not an issue. And the last 3 months, it has become a major issue. So again, the stock market is going to be one way that you would be able to perhaps lose funds. Now we have a couple late participants. Let me go ahead and let them in. And inflation, not really a big problem anymore, but we're going to focus on this area of long-term care. The average nursing home in our area now, their rate for long-term care is approaching $10,000 a month. So if you had a 5-year stay, we're really talking now about perhaps as much as a $600,000 cost to you. So what can we do about it? Well, let's first define it. What is long-term care? Long-term care essentially is the inability to do these 6 activities of daily living. They are listed here, or you have a cognitive impairment that requires supervision. So again, these are the standards that are going to be used by many government programs and or insurance companies. So what government programs are available? Well, federally, there's Medicaid and Medicare. Although they sound somewhat alike, they are as different as apples and oranges. Medicare started in 1965 and is designed for rehabilitation. It is not designed for what we call debilitating diseases such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and stroke. So if you have those particular maladies, Medicare is not going to be helpful. Medicare is also relatively short-term. It only will pay for up to 100 days in a skilled care facility. And the first 20 days with a 0 deductible, but 21 through 100, there would be $176 per day deductible. And many of the supplemental plans would pay for that. So again, Medicare, no, as far as long-term care. It does a great job at short-term, but it is not a long-term care program. And some of the articles that I read indicate that many folks think that Medicare does pay for extended long-term care because they've heard of friends that might have had a heart issue and Medicare paid, even though they went to a nursing home for a period of time. But for long-term care, debilitating diseases, especially like Alzheimer's, they do not pay. The number one payer of long-term care is Medicaid, and Medicaid is primarily in the nursing homes. And in order to qualify, many of you might be aware that you can only have $2,000 in assets. And we're going to talk a little bit later in the program how there are ways to be able to utilize some of the rules in order to be able to get an earlier qualification for Medicaid. And we'll focus on that in a subsequent slide. So we'll give Medicaid a big maybe if you have more than $2,000. There's also a federal program through the VA, the Veterans Administration, and it's called Aid and Attendance. And in order to qualify for this program, you have to have 90 days of active duty, 1 day of which was during wartime. You also have to have an honorable discharge or general discharge. Again, the 90 days of active duty, and you have to be disabled. And disabled is defined by that prior slide, the inability to do those activities of daily living. So again, we want to go ahead and make sure that you're able to get that. We act as sort of your consultant, look over the doctor's report, make sure that these particular benefits would be available. These are some of the dates for wartime. And if you do qualify, this is a great benefit for a veteran with a spouse, $2,266 per month, single veteran, $1,911 a month, and the widow of the veteran would receive $1,228. So again, tax-free. How many government benefits tax-free? No. So again, this is a thank you program, but you have to be able to meet the qualification. And the biggest new qualification as of October 18th of 2018 is you cannot have more than $129,000 in cash assets, excluding your car and your house. So again, for people that fall into that category, they would be able to get benefits right away because now the VA does have a 3-year look back. So they would look back 3 years for any gifting. Most of our clients, though, that come to us still have time to plan. They've recently retired, and now they are starting to become concerned about what happens if I get sick, what kind of strategies are going to be available to pay for assisted living, home care, or pray tell if you end up in a skilled nursing facility. We don't see Pete very often. This is the gentleman that used to come in and say, I'm never going to need long-term care because I'm going to die before that issue comes up. And that is not the way the statistics sort of read at this point. If you reach the age of 65, you have now over a 70% chance of needing some type of long-term care. So we don't see Pete very often. What is the real risk? Well, what's really driving all of this is Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's basically is a disease that is no cure, and a great deal of people over the age of 50 will end up having this illness. So again, these debilitating diseases are what really is driving the long-term care issue. And the federal government acknowledges that. They understand that. So they have created some incentives, especially through different insurance programs, in order to be able to help pay for long-term care. Why? Well, the government is smart enough to know that there's 8,900 boomers turning 65 every day. Life expectancy is continuing to increase from 84 to 86 years old. When I first started doing these seminars about 10 years ago, that same figure was 3 years less. So again, this is putting a strain on the government budget. And as we already talked about, Medicare will not pay for the cost of long-term care. So what is the solution to protecting your assets, belongings, should you or your spouse ever need long-term care? Well, the solution is creating additional streams of income that come into play when you need funds for long-term care. And of course, I'm sure the next question you have, that sounds great, is, but how do we create an additional stream of income to pay for long-term care? So we're going to look at a couple of programs that the government is encouraging us to purchase and see if that might be a great fit for you. First, we'll look at traditional long-term care insurance. Less than 7% of the people in the United States have traditional long-term care insurance. Well, why? And I'm sure you out in the audience are saying, because it's expensive. Well, it is expensive, and the fact is that premiums can continue to increase. There's no ceiling. They can continue to raise the premium, and the bigger issue is if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you never use the long-term care insurance policy, you paid into it for 20 years, and you have $150,000 into that policy, and you just happen to pass away in your sleep, the insurance company keeps your money. So that was not a very popular choice. What other options are there? Well, the government in 2010 here funded a Pension Protection Act plan. And by funding, what they have done is to create a tax-free transfer from a taxable annuity into a long-term care annuity. And by doing that exchange, and it has to be non-qualified, which means not IRA annuities. By doing that, when the money comes and is paid out, it is going to be tax-free if used for long-term care. So how does this really work? Well, Bob, who was 70 years old, had come to us. He was recently widowed. He had sold his family business, and he did have this $100,000 long-term care, annuity, and had grown into $200,000. So that means he had a $100,000 taxable gain. So if he basically cashed it in, he'd have to pay on that gain. So he basically was concerned about remaining in his home, but he had a couple of health concerns and was turned down by traditional long-term care insurance. So what could he do? Well, we recommended that he look at taking the $200,000, put it into that Pension Protection Act annuity, which is a long-term care annuity. And if he did so, he would have $1.1 million for long-term care. And this is a tax-free exchange, so the $200,000 would not be taxable, and it could be paid to him at a benefit level of $8,300 a month for home care, assisted living, or for skilled care. And the other benefit is that if he does die and never uses the money, his beneficiaries will again get the value of the annuity and what it has grown to. So again, this is what the government wants us to do. So they have tried to create tax incentives to allow us to do that. And this type of program has a little bit of soft underwriting. That's why Bob was able to get this, even though he had some health issues. But you know, most of our clients come to us and they have large IRAs. So how can we use some of that to help pay for the cost of long-term care? Well, Patty and Tim basically wanted to make sure that they had sufficient assets for long-term care. So we took $250,000 of their $700,000 IRA, and we put that into a long-term care IRA. And with this particular program, they would get immediate death benefit if something happened to both of them of $238,000, and they would have an unlimited long-term care pool that would pay out $7,200 per month for Patty and Tim each. So each one. So if they did go to assisted living, they would have $14,400 per month if both of them were in the facility. So again, great way to pay for home health care, great way to pay for assisted living. Because you see, when you have that much funding in your IRA, it's going to be very difficult to qualify for any of these government programs that we're going to talk about in a moment. We have a special situation, however, here for Tom, who was golfing basically with me last year. He got diagnosed with Parkinson's, so he was not able to be underwritten anymore. And the insurance industry has also responded by creating long-term care annuities that have an enhanced income if you can't do those 2 activities of daily living. So again, Tom had $300,000 in CDs. He then put this into a long-term care annuity. They give him an instant 18% bonus. And if he only kept it there for 5 years, that would grow to $400,000. And if he can't do the 2 activities of daily living, that income benefit then would be $52,000. Now, a lot of our husband and wives also like this plan if one or both of them cannot be underwritten. In other words, they have health issues already. Because you see, if Tom was getting this and he was married and then he passed away, his wife would then be entitled to a lifetime income. So again, the wife might be losing her Social Security because she's going to get the husband's because it's higher, and now she has a way to replace that loss of income. So again, the insurance company has responded with long-term care annuities, whether they're underwritten or not underwritten, to allow us to be able to have some way to pay for long-term care. Because you see, Medicaid is really not a great payer for assisted living. They have a few facilities that accept Medicaid, and really not a great payer for home care. So if you want home care or assisted living, you might want to consider these types of programs rather than relying on the government benefit. So what is the government benefit? We talked a little bit earlier about Medicaid. We said maybe you can get Medicaid. Now, many of you are probably aware that with Medicaid, you can only have $2,000 if you're a single case. And what we look at is what are the countable assets, and then see if there's a possibility, first and foremost, to move those into exempt assets that don't count. Because you see, the personal residence does count if you're a single person. You basically have to look at how are you going to deal with that if you're a single person. Medicaid used to have a 13-month exemption for that, but that does not exist anymore. And there's also the use of a Medicaid compliant annuity, which is a strategy to basically allow us to protect some additional assets. And I'm going to offer a way for you to get more information about that towards the end of our seminar. So again, Medicaid, single person, there are strategies to be able to protect assets. Now moving, and let's talk just a little bit before I go to this slide about husband and wife cases. Again, same type of thing. The amount that you're allowed to keep is basically half of your assets, but the half you're allowed to keep cannot exceed $128,640. So again, those are going to be specific cases. We call those crisis cases, and I'm going to offer you a way to get all of your questions answered in the next couple of slides if you have that situation. But I did say at the beginning that we're going to talk about what do you need to do now with this coronavirus issue. What do we need to have in place? Well, first, you have to have a couple of documents in place. And the first is a financial power of attorney, and you want to have a powerful power of attorney. And that means you have to have certain clauses in that power of attorney that allow us to maneuver and move things around as would become necessary. And you obviously want to have a medical power of attorney and a living will, because the key here is you might not be able to make decisions for yourself. You might be unavailable. If you're quarantined, you need to maybe have somebody that can act on your behalf. If you do get sick with the COVID-19 coronavirus, you might have to have somebody be able to make medical decisions for you. Because if you don't have these documents, then you will have to have a guardian. And guardianship could take 5 weeks. You don't get to choose who your guardian is. And you could avoid all of that by having these simple documents in place. So basically, we've created a system that allows you to purchase these documents. We will have them ready within 48 hours. And we do curbside signing, which means you just drive up, we have the documents ready, we hand them through your window, you sign them, and we've taken every precaution that we can to make sure that you are safe and you have the current documents that you would need. So again, for our COVID-19 legal packet, we're looking at those simple documents: financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney, and living will. So we avoid the guardianship. And then we can circle back around when things loosen up a little bit and talk about whether a revocable or an irrevocable trust might be appropriate. Irrevocable trust is an asset protection tool, and our version of that is called a Keystone Trust. And that would be something that we can get into when we can meet face-to-face, because that we can look at your asset picture, what can we accomplish, what kind of health issues do you have, how old are you, do we have time to implement all of this? So how can we serve you? Well, we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to discuss whatever long-term care pre-plan strategy you might have. If you are in a crisis, we can talk about what asset protection plans are available to you. And of course, the main thing is we want to execute the necessary documents to provide another person to act on your behalf. Really, really critical right now to have that in place so that you don't have to have a guardianship and things can be taken care of privately. We're also going to be able to talk, if you choose to, about how we can turn some taxable dollars into tax-free dollars, which we just talked about, using some of those insurance type of annuities. So basically, we have both the insurance company and the law firm available to you in order to be able to give you that full service. And we only focus on long-term care products. We're not involved in any of the other pieces of financial management. And the focus was there primarily because we wanted to make sure that you had good information to make really good decisions. So how do we get all your questions answered? Well, we're going to offer a 15-minute complimentary consultation. You can call my office and talk to Debbie at 440-888-6448. If you make this appointment within the next 24 hours, you will receive a free copy of my newest book, You Are Not Alone, and a $100 education credit towards whatever services that you utilize from our firm. So again, call Debbie at 440-888-6448, and we'll be glad to help you out and see what you might need to change or add, or perhaps you have some specific questions for me. So again, give her a call and we'll be glad to have an opportunity then to talk to you. Well, that basically wraps it up for me tonight. I'm pretty excited to go ahead and watch the football draft and see how the Brownies do. So again, I won't hold you up, and appreciate you tuning in tonight, and stay safe and have a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you.